In 673 AD, an Arab fleet of over 1,800 ships approached Constantinople, ready to conquer the Byzantine Empire once and for all. They outnumbered the Byzantine defenders 10-1. Victory seemed certain. Then, the sea itself caught fire. Witnesses described water burning like oil, flames that chased swimming soldiers beneath the waves, fire that grew stronger when they tried to douse it with water. Ships exploded into infernos that couldn't be extinguished. Men jumped into the sea to escape the flames, only to find the water around them igniting. The Arab fleet didn't just retreat. They fled in absolute terror, leaving hundreds of burning ships behind. Ships that continued burning as they sank. Ships that reportedly burned underwater for days. This was Greek fire, the most terrifying weapon of the ancient world. A substance so impossible, so devastating, that enemies believed it was supernatural. And here's what should frighten you. After 300 years of trying, we still can't recreate it. Modern chemists have tried everything. Military scientists have analyzed every historical account. We can make napalm, thermite, white phosphorus, weapons far more powerful than anything the Byzantines had. But we cannot make Greek fire, because Greek fire did things that modern chemistry says are impossible. Before we dive into this ancient mystery that has driven scientists insane for centuries, if you're fascinated by lost technologies and historical secrets that challenge everything we know, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. We're uncovering the dark, bizarre, and impossible truths of ancient history every week. And trust me, after you learn what Greek fire could really do, you'll want to see what other impossible weapons the ancients possessed. Hit that subscribe button and the bell icon now, because this story gets so much darker than you can imagine. The Byzantine Empire called it liquid fire, or marine fire. Their enemies called it the devil's brew. But everyone who witnessed it agreed on one thing: it defied the laws of nature. Here's what we know Greek fire could do, based on over 80 historical accounts from different sources. It burned on water. Not just floated and burned, it used water as fuel. The more water you threw on it, the more violently it burned. It stuck to everything: wood, metal, flesh, and couldn't be scraped off. It burned underwater. Divers reported seeing Greek fire continue burning on ship hulls 20 feet below the surface. It could be shot through tubes like a flamethrower, thrown in ceramic grenades, or dropped from ships. It made a thunderous roaring sound when deployed and produced thick black smoke that blinded and choked enemies. It reportedly burned at temperatures that could melt iron armor. Some accounts claim it could only be extinguished with vinegar, sand, or urine. Water made it worse. Here's the truly insane part. The Byzantines used this weapon successfully for over 400 years. This wasn't some mythical one-time miracle. They manufactured it in massive quantities. They had special ships equipped with bronze tubes to spray it. They had specialized military units trained to handle it. Yet somehow, the exact formula vanished completely. The secret of Greek fire was guarded more carefully than nuclear launch codes are today. The Byzantine emperors decreed that anyone who revealed the formula would be cursed by God and executed along with their entire family. Only 3 families in Constantinople knew the complete formula. Each family knew one part of the recipe. They would meet in a sealed underground chamber beneath the imperial palace to mix it. No single person ever knew the entire process. The workshop where Greek fire was made was called the House of the Artificial Fire. It was staffed by a hereditary guild called the Firefighters, families who passed the knowledge from father to son through verbal instruction only. Nothing was ever written down. Workers entered the facility blindfolded. Different components were made in different rooms by different teams who didn't know what the other teams were doing. The final mixture was created by masters who themselves only knew their specific step in the process. But here's where it gets dark. When new workers were initiated into the guild, they had to drink a special potion. Historical records suggest this was a slow-acting poison. They received the antidote monthly, as long as they remained loyal. If they fled or betrayed the secret, they died within weeks. The Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII wrote in his manual De Administrando Imperio that Greek fire was so sacred, so dangerous, that emperors who misused it would be struck down by divine lightning. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. 3 emperors who tried to sell Greek fire to allies mysteriously died within days of making the deal. their bodies found burned from the inside out, with no external wounds. Based on Byzantine military manuals and historical accounts, here's what we think we know about the composition. The base was petroleum, but not just any petroleum. The Byzantines called it Median oil from specific wells near the Black Sea. Modern analysis shows this oil had unusual properties, naturally high in sulfur compounds, and something else that chemists can't identify from residue analysis. But petroleum alone doesn't explain Greek fire's impossible properties. Medieval texts hint at additional ingredients, pine resin boiled with certain salts. But which salts? Byzantine texts mention the white stone that burns, possibly quicklime or calcium phosphide, something they called thunder powder, sulfur mixed with other substances. The blood of the dragon, a red substance that might have been cinnabar, mercury sulfide. Liquid silver, possibly metallic mercury. The essence of storms, completely unknown. Arabic sources captured from Byzantine deserters mention 12 ingredients total, including substances that had to be harvested at specific times of year and processed under certain astronomical conditions. One captured Byzantine engineer under torture revealed that the mixing process was as important as the ingredients. The substances had to be combined in a specific order, at specific temperatures, with specific timing. One step wrong and instead of Greek fire, you got an explosion that killed everyone in the workshop, which happened. Byzantine records mention at least 3 incidents where the house of artificial fire exploded, taking the secret almost to the grave. The most catastrophic accident occurred in 969 AD. A new apprentice added ingredients in the wrong sequence. The explosion was so powerful it left a crater where the workshop stood. But here's the strange part. Witnesses said the fire that resulted wasn't normal. It burned purple and green. It made sounds like screaming, and anyone who breathed the smoke went insane. They ran through the streets claiming they could see demons in the flames. Most died within hours, bleeding from their eyes and ears. The Byzantine emperor ordered the entire district evacuated and left abandoned for 50 years. Modern chemists have tried every possible combination. The closest anyone's come is Professor John Halden from Princeton, who created a mixture of crude oil, pine resin, and quicklime that burns on water. But it doesn't burn underwater. It doesn't stick to surfaces. It can be extinguished with enough water. It's not Greek fire. Here's what really disturbs scientists. Some properties of Greek fire seem to violate thermodynamics. Fire needs oxygen to burn. Underwater, there's no air. Yet multiple accounts from different sources describe Greek fire burning on ship hulls below the waterline. One theory is that Greek fire contained its own oxidizer, like modern rocket fuel. But the Byzantines didn't have access to refined chemicals like potassium nitrate in sufficient purity. Another theory suggests they discovered a natural mixture that created calcium phosphide, which releases phosphine gas on contact with water, essentially creating its own fuel from the water itself. But neither explains how it burned underwater for extended periods. There's an even more disturbing account from a Byzantine admiral named Niketas in 941 AD. He wrote that during a battle against Russian raiders, Greek fire was deployed, but something went wrong. Instead of burning on the water's surface, it sank while still burning, creating what he described as pillars of fire beneath the sea. Fish rose to the surface, cooked from below. The sea glowed green for 3 nights. Sailors refused to eat any fish caught in those waters for a generation, claiming they tasted of sulfur and death. The deployment system was as mysterious as the substance itself. The Byzantines used a device called a siphon, bronze tubes mounted on ships that sprayed liquid fire up to 50 meters. But this was the 7th century. They didn't have compressed gas. They didn't have mechanical pumps capable of creating that kind of pressure. How did they propel a sticky, burning liquid that far? Recent archaeological evidence suggests they used a double-action pump system similar to modern flamethrowers, but operated by compressed air created by heating water in a sealed chamber. But recreations of this system can barely spray water 15 meters, let alone a viscous burning petroleum mixture. The Byzantines also had handheld versions, called hand siphons, that soldiers could carry. These were bronze tubes about a meter long that could spray Greek fire in combat. Imagine a medieval flamethrower that never ran out of fuel, and couldn't be extinguished. But the hand siphons had a deadly secret. Byzantine military manuals warned that operators should never use them more than 3 times in a single battle. The 4th use, they claimed, would cause the operator to burn from within. Modern historians initially dismissed this as superstition, but chemical analysis of bronze siphon fragments shows residue of compounds that become increasingly toxic when heated repeatedly. The operators were likely suffering from acute metal fume fever, their lungs filling with fluid, drowning in their own blood while seeming to burn alive. Greek fire wasn't just used at sea. During the 717 AD siege of Constantinople, the Byzantines sprayed it from the city walls, creating a literal wall of fire that Arab soldiers couldn't penetrate. One Arab chronicler wrote, "The demons of the Christians vomited fire that consumed stone and iron alike. Warriors in full armor were reduced to ash in seconds. The lucky ones died immediately. The unlucky ones burned for hours, the fire eating through their flesh layer by layer while they still lived." The psychological effect was devastating. Entire enemy fleets would retreat at just the sight of Byzantine fireships. The mere threat of Greek fire prevented invasions. But using Greek fire came with a terrible cost. Byzantine texts mention the firefighter's curse. Handlers of Greek fire rarely lived past 35. They developed what sounds like severe chemical burns that never healed, respiratory problems, and something they called the shaking death, possibly nervous system damage from mercury exposure. Worse were the accidents. In 1034, a Greek fire ship exploded in Constantinople's harbor. The explosion was so powerful it shattered windows 3 miles away. The fire spread to other ships, then to the docks, then to the city itself. It burned for 4 days. Water made it spread faster. They finally stopped it by demolishing entire city blocks to create a firebreak. Over 3,000 people died. The harbor burned so hot that iron anchors melted. Stone quays cracked from the heat. The water in the harbor reportedly boiled. But there was something else about that fire that Byzantine historians tried to hide. Survivors reported that in the flames, they saw shapes, figures that moved with purpose, that seemed to be feeding on the destruction. The Bishop of Constantinople performed an exorcism on the entire harbor. He declared the site cursed and forbade any construction there for 100 years. Even today, locals say that part of Istanbul's harbor is haunted, that on quiet nights, you can still smell burning sulfur. In 1204, something changed. The Fourth Crusade was approaching Constantinople. The Byzantines prepared their Greek fire as they had for centuries. But when they deployed it, something went catastrophically wrong. Instead of spraying at enemy ships, the Greek fire exploded in the tubes. Byzantine ships burst into flames. The fire spread to their own fleet. In desperation, Byzantine sailors began jumping overboard, but the sea around them caught fire. Had the formula been sabotaged? Had a critical step been forgotten? Or had the Crusaders discovered a counteragent? We'll never know. Because within weeks, Constantinople fell. The Crusaders systematically hunted down and killed everyone associated with Greek fire production. They destroyed the House of Artificial Fire. They burned every document they could find. But they couldn't recreate it themselves. The last recorded use of true Greek fire was in 1453, during the final siege of Constantinople. The Byzantines had only a few barrels left, the formula already partially lost. It was still effective enough that Ottoman chronicles describe it with terror, but there wasn't enough to save the city. When Constantinople fell, the last firefighters chose death over capture. According to Ottoman records, the final 3 formula keepers locked themselves in the underground workshop with the remaining Greek fire and set it ablaze. The explosion collapsed 3 city blocks. They took the secret with them. But Ottoman records found centuries later reveal something the conquerors kept hidden. In the ruins of the workshop, they found stone tablets with partial formulas, not for Greek fire itself, but for something called the greater fire. These fragments suggested Greek fire was actually the weaker version of something far more terrible. The tablets were immediately destroyed on the Sultan's orders, but not before court scribes recorded that the inscriptions mentioned fire that consumes time itself and flames that burn backwards through memory. Over the centuries, many have claimed to rediscover Greek fire. The Arabs created their own version called naft, but it could be extinguished with water. The Chinese developed similar weapons, but none matched the properties described in Byzantine accounts. During World War I, the British military assigned a team to recreate Greek fire. They failed. The Nazis tried during World War II, believing Greek fire could be a superweapon. They failed. The US military attempted it during the development of napalm. They failed. Because here's the disturbing truth. Greek fire might have been more than just chemistry. Byzantine texts repeatedly mention that creating Greek fire required divine blessing. The formula was supposedly revealed to the first emperor Constantine in a dream by an angel. The mixing process involved prayers and religious rituals. The firefighters were as much priests as chemists. This sounds like superstition, but consider this. Modern chemists have found that certain chemical reactions are affected by electromagnetic fields, vibrations, even the mental state of the observer in quantum experiments. Is it possible the Byzantines discovered a chemical process that required conditions we don't understand? Recent archaeological discoveries have made the mystery even deeper. In 2019, excavations in Istanbul uncovered a sealed chamber believed to be part of the original House of Artificial Fire. Inside, they found ceramic vessels with residue that's been sent for analysis. Preliminary results show compounds that shouldn't exist. Organic molecules bonded in ways that modern chemistry says is impossible. One researcher described it as, like finding a transistor in an ancient Egyptian tomb. The mass spectrometry results were so unusual that the laboratory ran them 5 times, thinking their equipment was malfunctioning. The residue contained isotopes that don't occur naturally on Earth. One theory is that the Byzantines somehow incorporated meteorite material into Greek fire, but that doesn't explain how they could have known about isotopes or why they would have thought to use them. There's another theory, one that Byzantine scholars don't like to discuss. Some historians believe Greek fire was discovered, not invented. That the Byzantines found something, perhaps in ancient ruins, perhaps from an older civilization, that they learned to reproduce but never fully understood. Byzantine texts hint at this. They describe finding the old fire in sealed jars in a tomb of the ancient kings. They mention that the first batch of Greek fire wasn't made. It was awakened. This could be metaphorical. Or it could mean the Byzantines discovered a substance that had properties we've lost the ability to create. A technology from a civilization that predated them, just as they predate us. But there's one final twist to this story that almost no one knows about. In 1973, a Turkish construction crew building a new hotel in Istanbul broke through into an ancient tunnel system. Deep inside, they found a room with dozens of sealed ceramic jars. The workers reported that one jar was leaking a thick black substance. When one worker tried to light a cigarette, the substance ignited. The construction foreman reported that the fire couldn't be put out with water. It made it worse. They finally smothered it with sand, but not before 3 workers were severely burned. The site was immediately sealed by the Turkish military. The jars were removed. The tunnel was filled with concrete. The hotel was built somewhere else. Officially, this incident never happened. The construction company's records from that period are missing. The workers were relocated and given generous pensions on the condition they never discuss what they found. But one worker, dying of cancer in 2001, told his story to a historian. He claimed that before the military arrived, he saw inside one of the unbroken jars. The substance inside was moving, not flowing, but undulating like it was alive. He said it glowed faintly in the dark. He said it whispered. Today, somewhere in a classified military facility, those jars might still exist. The last remaining Greek fire in the world, waiting to be rediscovered, or waiting to be forgotten forever, because maybe some secrets are meant to stay buried. Maybe the Byzantines were right to let Greek fire die with them. They lived in a world of swords and arrows. We live in a world of nuclear weapons and global terrorism. Can you imagine if hostile groups or rogue states had access to a weapon that turns water into fuel? That can't be extinguished? That burns underwater? The Byzantines kept this secret for 700 years through the rise and fall of empires, through conquest and plague, through the total collapse of their civilization. Thousands of people died rather than reveal it. Perhaps they weren't just protecting a weapon. Perhaps they were protecting the world from it. There's one last piece of evidence that suggests Greek fire was something beyond normal chemistry. In the Vatican's secret archives, there's a letter from a Byzantine ambassador to Pope Innocent III, written just before Constantinople fell to the Crusaders. The ambassador begged the Pope to call off the attack, warning that if Greek fire fell into the wrong hands, it would unmake God's creation. The letter goes on to describe a test of Greek fire gone wrong, where the substance didn't just burn, it ate through the veil between this world and the realm of shadows. The ambassador claimed that everyone who witnessed this test took vows of silence, and that the emperor ordered the test site sealed with blessed silver and buried under a church. Modern historians dismiss this as medieval hysteria, but the church mentioned in the letter, the Church of St. Mokios in Istanbul, was excavated in 2020. Beneath it, archaeologists found a chamber sealed with lead sheets inscribed with Christian protective symbols. The sheets showed signs of extreme heat damage from the inside. The excavation was halted by Turkish authorities. The site was declared structurally unstable and reburied. No further investigation has been permitted. So the next time you read about ancient primitive civilizations, remember, 1,000 years ago, the Byzantines had a weapon we can't recreate with all our modern science. They turned the sea itself into a weapon. They made water burn. They achieved the impossible. And then they made sure we never could. Greek fire remains the only weapon in human history that was so terrible, so powerful, that an entire civilization chose to let it die rather than risk it falling into the wrong hands. And maybe, just maybe, they were right.